Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of Stories from the Last Territory, a podcast that covers the golden years of wrestling in Puerto Rico. My name is Luis Cuevas, better known as Caveman, and I am your host for this trip back in time to the greatest feuds in the history of the island of Puerto Rico. For those that have asked, the song at the beginning of the audio podcast is none other than Joy by Apollo 100, and it was the song that Capital Sports Promotions used from the late 70s to the late 80s as their main song. And I wanted to do a little nostalgia trip for everybody that will listen to the podcast. And I asked a good friend of mine to do a cover version of it. And it was done by a good friend named Alex Joel, who's a great pianist. And you could follow him at Alex Joel on Facebook, AJ Music 23 on Instagram, and X. Before we start with the episode of this week, I want to make a clarification from a note that I mentioned last week in the first podcast. We mentioned that the first Carter record was in 1938. But after the podcast, my very good friend and fellow historian and brother, Miguel Rodriguez, went in one of his deep dives that he usually does and came with the first card ever held in the island of Puerto Rico. And it was held on the night of December 10th, 1937, in El Escambrón in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The card was just three matches: Steve Bradley versus Mike Tulligen, Rodolfo Lopez versus Al Alex, and a main event of Huge the Cowboy versus Angelo Savordi in a match with an hour and a half time limit. The cheap seats were 50 cents, and ringside with 8 chairs for you and your family were $10. So, pretty good deal. So now we know for sure when wrestling started in the island, as the newspaper clearly mentioned, for the first time ever, like you have watching the movies, professional wrestling. And a fellow historian in X mentioned that it was from a group in Boston. So that's where the first wrestlers that came to the island came from. I forgot his name and I apologize for forgetting his name. But getting to our topic at hand, today we're going to talk about the first feud between two local wrestlers for the biggest title in Puerto Rico, the Universal Heavyweight Championship. And it's the battle between El Acróbata de Puerto Rico and the Sansón Boricua, Hercules Ayala and Carlos Colon, that covered basically 2 years between the years 1987 to its conclusion on January 6, 1989, in a losers leave town match. This was a very personal and bloody feud that include family, nationality, and many other wild things, and that to this day they have tried to recreate without much success. And we have seen as early as a couple of weeks ago they try to recreate stuff from this angle. Before we start talking about the feud, it'll be good to know what both were doing during this time that their feud started. Carlos Colon had just finished for me one of his best feuds of my fandom, his feud with Stan Hansen. That was an unbelievable example of storytelling and how one match connected with the other one into their conclusion in a cage match at the Mess Pavilion. And I cannot wait to do a podcast of that feud in a later episode, not in this one. And was kind of like in a transition period, fighting Jason the Terrible. He was fighting other foes, waiting into his next big feud. On the other hand, Hercules Ayala during this time was a little lost in the shuffle. He was always portrayed as a strong babyface, but was not really in a strong feud that he had been in 1985 and 1986, where we saw him facing the likes of Randy Macho Man Savage, Killer Tim Brooks, Kevin Sullivan, and we even saw him fighting Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. During this time, Hercules Ayala started saying in his interviews that he was working on a new finisher that he couldn't wait to bring to the fans, but that he could not do it yet because he was still working on it. At the same time that this was happening, during the matches of Carlos Colon during this time, the rule breakers would start interfering, leading to the baby faces coming to the defense, and we had like all out brawls between the rule breakers and the good guys all around ringside while Carlos Colon was facing his main opponent in the ring. But for some reason or other, Hercules Ayala will always arrive late. And this happened for a couple of weeks. While on TV, he continued to state that he was working on something. And after being pressed by Hugo, he said, I would love to tell you, but not yet. Give me time, but when it comes in, people are going to be super impressed. In a TV match between Hercules Ayala and Miguelito Perez, the story kept moving forward. as they were facing the tag team of TNT, better known as Savio Vega, and Jason the Terrible. During the match, every time Hercules Ayala would be in trouble, Miguelito Perez would do the same, and this happened throughout the match many times to help Hercules after every count, after every submission hold that the rule breakers would have, Miguelito would come for the save. But after a long while, Hercules finally gives the tag to Miguelito Perez, who cleans the house but was stopped by the rule breakers, who basically did whatever they wanted with Miguelito Perez. But Hercules would not do anything. Complaining of being hit in the head. You could see him in the corner, like shaking his head, like, I don't know what's going on. And this continued for the rest of the match where the fans were like, hey, help Miguelito. Finally, Miguelito succumbed to the Cobra Crush while fans were screaming at Hercules Ayala to interfere to no avail. Finally, things start moving. When in a match between Carlos Colon and Jason the Terrible in the Mets Pavilion, it happened again. The rule breakers again interfered, and the faces came roaring outside to the rescue, except for Hercules Ayala, who came in long after the situation was clear. And that led to Carlos and Invader getting upset with him because everybody was there and he got there like 5 minutes later. And they left him alone in the ring. The following week in TV, Hugo Sabinovich told us that the Justice Army, which was the name given to the babyface group, were going to have a meeting, and that the program and the cameras of the Superestrellas de la Lucha Libre have been invited to that meeting. In that meeting, all the babyfaces are together in a table. Carlos Colon is sitting on one side, Invader sitting in the other, all the babyfaces, and Hercules Ayala is in the middle. Carlos Colon starts the meeting telling Hercules that he knows that Hercules is a straight up man. So he wants to know what's going on. Hercules plays dumb and asks, Carlos, I really don't know what you're talking about here, man. I don't even know why I'm here. What is this all about? So Carlos is like, well, let me show you a video. Maybe this will refresh your memory. And he shows a match where Hercules gets there late. And Hercules says, well, you know me, I like to do exercises in the back. I was doing my Hindu squats. I was doing my push-ups. I was trying to get in the sun for my match. I was just in the back. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Invader butts in and goes, well, let me tell you something, Hercules. This is not the first time that you do this, and shows him another video. And this is the one where we have mentioned that he gets there like 5 minutes late. Again, Hercules tries to make a case. Well, guys, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. I don't like to watch any of your matches. I think I was in the bathroom or somewhere reading the paper. I don't know what I was doing. And when I came out and I noticed that the dressing room was empty, that's when I ran to the ring. Stuff happens, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. Castillo then asked him about the tag team match with Miguelito, and he said, you know what, you left Miguelito there to die. And, what the heck is going on? And Hercules interrupts him and goes, let me tell you something, man. I'm a man of my word. And when I say I'm with the Justice Army, I am with the Justice Army. I am offended that you guys would bring this up. In fact, let's stick together. Let's kill the rule breakers. El Club Deportivo is going to go down, and I'm with you guys all the way. You guys don't have to worry about me because I'm Justice Army all the way, baby, 100%. And the segment finished with the babyface team singing Kumbaya, my love, holding hands, doing a rah-rah. And Hugo Sabinovich comes out and says, oh, what a great privilege we have to see the Justice Army back in the same page. It was an honor for us to see this unity. I feel bad for Chiqui starting his sports club because now the Justice Army is in the same page. So, hey, so everybody's happy, and something happened. Carlos was fighting in the next match, and the rule breakers came in and attacked them, and the baby faces came running out, and there was a big fight all over Iran Bison Stadium, while Galon Mendoza and Buff Hefferman continued to attack Carlos. First, Invader made the save, and then Hercules came to the ring, and a little argument happened between Invader and Hercules while they're tending to Carlos. Hercules stand up and look at both. And Chiqui Star is from the outside holding a chair and telling Hercules, grab it and use it. Hercules is thinking about it. He looks at the chair. He looks at Invader and Carlos. He keeps looking, and finally he grabs the chair and just blasted Invader with that chair shot. If we were to believe Hugo, Invader needed 33 stitches after that chair shot, which was an incredible chair shot. And after taking out Invader, he went to town on Carlos, beating the living hell out of him, culminating on his surprise move that he had promised through all these weeks, the figure four leg lock. And he applied it to Carlos while holding the ropes. And it seemed Carlos was in that hole forever, with Chiqui Star even helping him pull down the ropes to give him more leverage. Into finally, the rest of the baby faces who were fighting by the dugouts realized what was going on and came back. The end was both Invader and Carlos stretched out, while Hercules Ayala left with Chiqui starting a turn that to this day is remembered as one of the greatest turns ever in the island of Puerto Rico because nobody expected it at that moment. Next week on TV, Hugo asked Hercules, "Why, Hercules? Why? Why you did this?" And Hercules said that he's an adult and he did not appreciate what the baby faces did to him, and that he also did it for the money. And now he will be able to make as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time. And looking back at it, shoot, he was right. He went from mid card money to main event money. So the man had a point. Carlos was out for a bit to sell the injury, but came back with a vengeance, and the feud started running with no clear winner between both of them. They fought in all types of matches with no clear decision of who was the better man. Until finally, they held a Texas Death match on June. I want to say June. No, I'm sorry, July 18, 1987, for the Universal title. And I know in the United States and Japan they have the Muta scale, but here in Puerto Rico, we have the Colon scale. And it's based on this match where Carlos Colon bled so much he could have saved the Red Cross from any shortage for the next year. I mean, this match is a very bloody match. Even for Puerto Rico standards, it's a bloody match. And after an incredible beating that Carlos Colon held during this match, the doctor stopped the match and awarded the title to Hercules Ayala. That way, Hercules Ayala became the second Puerto Rican to ever win the Universal Heavyweight title. For the next couple months, they fought everywhere. Hercules retaining the title by disqualification, pinning Colon, or if he lost the match, it was only because he would run away because of a countout, and that led to Anniversary 87, which we are going to talk in another podcast. And that anniversary, Capital Sports Promotion held a show in 3 different locations. And this is something that WrestleMania 2 could not even touch. They put 40,000 fans attending the 3 locations and showing the matches in closed circuit TV. The Carlos versus Hercules match was held in the southern city of Ponce. And I was at that event as I was a big Hercules Ayala fan. For some reason, I was tired of Carlos during this time, like I was tired of Hulk Hogan. And they faced in a barbed wire match. So that way there will be no countouts, no disqualifications, etc., etc., etc. In this match, Carlos won, but there was still some controversy about the ending of the match, at least from Hercules' side. As he mentioned that he was holding the ropes and that his head was under the ring, which meant that the ref had to break the hold, and he appealed the decision. After a week or two, the commission decided the result was good enough to stand. And that led to an incredible promo by both Hercules and Carlos Ayala that for some reason is stuck in my memory like it happened yesterday. It's one of those things that you cannot forget, that you remember it like you were there, like you're watching the TV show right now. I can even tell you where Hercules Ayala was. He was right standing right next to Chiqui Star, and that in that promo he said that he was embarrassed by the commission, that he was embarrassed by the fans of Puerto Rico, that there was a conspiracy from the people of Puerto Rico for him not to win the title because everybody was in favor of Carlos Colon, and that from now on, he would not consider himself anymore being from Puerto Rico, but he was going to be considered himself from Canada. Everybody knows his wife was from Canada. So he repudiates being a Puerto Rican, and that led to a very passionate promo by Carlos Colon, one of his best ones, in my opinion, that tonight he was going to show Hercules a lesson because he who renounced his country renounced his mother. And as soon as Carlos said that, my grandfather was already in the car turned on. He was like, let's go, ready to go to the show because he, he had to be there to support Carlos Colon and show Hercules that son of a bitch that you don't do that. You never turn your back in your country. Yes, to my grandfather, it was still real to him. And that match, well, of course, it didn't have a finish. They fought to a double disqualification, and they continue fighting over the Universal title. There was an angle around this time where Carlos was supposed to wrestle Karim Mohammed and TV taping, but Hercules attacked him with a fishnet, putting the fishnet over Carlos and just beating the living hell out of him again on a TV taping. I'm not sure exactly the date, but it was a wild angle on TV, and it was during this period of time. And I mean, it was crazy. The fans were ready to jump uh, the aisles in Catania to defend Carlos Colon. For some reason, I don't know if it was because the feud got too personal or something, but Capital Sports Promotion decided to cool the feud for the next couple months. And for the most part, they kept them apart, with Carlos defending the title against Iron Cheek and against other opponents, and Hercules winning the Caribbean title and facing people like TNT, like Miguelito Perez, and so and so. Finally, they met again in May, and Hercules won the Universal title thanks to interference from Ron Starr. And that led to Hercules Ayala having both titles, the Caribbean and the Universal title. But the feud didn't really pick up again into later. Interesting enough, the plans for the anniversary of that year was Abdullah versus Carlos and Hercules Ayala defending the Universal title against Ronnie Garvin. But then the event that changed Puerto Rico wrestling one way or the other for the rest of its existence happened. The killing of Bruiser Brody happened, and the houses went down. And trust me when I say they went down. You can go to Armstrong Alley and see the programs that happened during this time, and they were really down. And it seemed like nothing could revive the promotion from all the bad press, from everything that happened during the Brody incident. But then they had shot an angle between Hercules and Carlos, and it felt like it was back to the good old days. The angle was a very famous one that is still remembered to this day. Capital Sports Promotion held an award ceremony, kind of like the Slammy Awards. They had the participation of Joe Pedicino, his wife, and good old Golden Sully, where they were going to do, award ceremony to give the best match, best wrestler, and so and so. And they announced that they were transmitting this through all continental United States and across the world. And of course, so to make it seem like a big deal. And it was kind of cool to see all the wrestlers walking through the red carpet and the people outside and Hugo Sabinovich trying to interview them. Do you think you're going to win the award and stuff like that? It was very cool for 1987, which is before the Slammy Awards and all that kind of stuff that in Puerto Rico, we kind of did that before WWE. So they finally announced the nominees for Wrestler in the Year, and Hercules Ayala stand up. He's fixing his suit, thinking it was his name that was going to be called. But to the surprise of everyone, of course, it was Carlos Colon who won the award. Carlos Colon goes up there and he accepts the awards. He thanks everyone. He thanks the piragua maker. He thanks the people in the other wrestlers. He thanks his wife, who he brings up stage. And he tells her this award is for her because of everything she has done, all the sacrifices for him to wrestle. And Hercules gets up there and he's super mad. He interrupts Carlos Colon, saying again that he was screwed by the office, that this is a conspiracy, that Carlos Colon had paid for that award, that he was the best wrestler of the year. And Carlos Colon's like, please, man, respect the occasion. This is being transmitted worldwide. We want to give a good impression of Puerto Rico. We got Gordon Sully here. We got Joe Pedicino. Please don't do this. And Hercules like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And I don't have anything to do with that. And he attacked Carlos Colon, and he beat up Carlos, and he beat up his wife, while Hugo and Gordon Sully were begging him to stop. It was a wild angle with fans and other wrestlers trying to separate them, and Hercules Ayala just beating Carlos Colon and his wife. This revived the promotion, and the houses, believe it or not, went up, with Carlos looking for vengeance. WWC stripped Hercules of the Universal title, and Carlos swore to look for revenge for Hercules. for putting his hands on his wife. And he asked for a match against Hercules in that anniversary show that became one of the most famous matches in the history of Puerto Rico, a fire match for the anniversary show. Even when this was not the first fire match in the island, as it had been done in the island since 1978 when wrestler and referee El Vikingo brought it to Puerto Rico from El Salvador, this one became quickly the more famous and imitated across the world. In this match, Carlos again got his revenge, defeating Hercules Ayala in maybe not their best match, but certainly their more famous match that they had in this field. They continue batting again in front of full houses, including another Texas Death match in September 24, where Hercules Ayala had promised that Carlos Colon would not make it to the Universal title tournament that was going to be held in the Thanksgiving card. In that match, the doctor ordered the match stop to both of them bleeding buckets in that ring. This led to a stretcher match in Caguas that I was able to be there live, where Carlos won after hitting Hercules with a brass knuckle that TNT had given him as a payback for Hercules Ayala doing the same to him in a prior occasion. This led to the famous last batalla in Carolina, the last battle in Carolina. That really was not the last battle, but I remember the announcements for TV. You know, they had the dead cross and everything, and they had other rules for this match. Because supposedly this was going to be the last match, but of course it wasn't. The feud reached its end when Carlos Colon recovered the Universal title from Ronnie Garvin, who had defeated him in Thanksgiving Day. And Carlos was doing an interview with Hugo Sabinovich about a third match with Ronnie Garvin and how happy he was that the sixth time that he has won the Universal title was like he was the most proud because it was the most difficult for him because Ronnie Garvin was a great wrestler and he couldn't do this without the fans. You know, Carlos Colon is going super baby face, kissing butt, kissing babies, all that kind of stuff. And he's interrupted by Hercules Ayala, who demands a match for the title that he had never lost in the ring. Carlos told him, you know, I have no vote in this. I'm not the person who decide who my challengers are. And you know, if I was the one who was able to pick, I would pick you because I will fight you, Hercules, any day of the week due to personal issues before. And after a give and take, Hugo asked Hercules to leave the set. Well, Carlos was very flustered that Hercules had ruined his day, ruined his promo, that he didn't even want to talk about Ronnie Garvin no more. When Hercules came back with chloroform and put it in Carlos' mouth, putting him to sleep. While Hugo was screaming out of his mind, Hugo Sabinovich saw this angle so amazing. Uh, he's screaming for Hercules to stop. He even breaks character, start calling Hercules by his real name. Ruben, stop, Ruben, para, which is Hercules Ayala's real name. Once Carlos was put to sleep and he takes Hugo out, Hercules grabs a scissor and it's one of the wildest things on TV that you can see. He starts going, "Oh, look at your hair. You know, I don't like your haircut. Let me fix this for you, buddy. Let me fix this." And he starts cutting his hair while he's making snide comments. Then he goes, "Man, this size is too long for you. You know, let me cut this for you. Let me make it right. Look at that. Now you're looking good, Carlos. Now you're looking good. But that suit, I don't know who's your tailor, man, but he doesn't know what he's doing. I can do everything." And he starts cutting the arms from the suit. And he goes, "Those pants, man, who told you to wear those pants? Those pants are too long." And he starts cutting the pants and he's telling you, you know, I am multifaceted. I can do everything. I'm Hercules Ayala. Look at you. Now you're looking pretty. Look at that, Hercules. And it was one of the most shocking things because Carlos Colon looked like he was dead on TV. It is one of the craziest things we have seen in Puerto Rico TV. I don't think you can pull that stuff today. You could watch it in YouTube. It's an amazing display of violence by Hercules Ayala and his night comments while he's doing this is crazy, man. It's just nuts. Of course, once Carlos woke up, he said that this feud had to end one way or the other, and he asked that the match in January 6th be moved from Ronnie Garvin to a match with Hercules Ayala, and that Puerto Rico was too small for both of them to be in there. And he challenged Hercules to a match where the loser had to leave Puerto Rico. The TV show before the match, it looked like the Lawler Dundee match in '83, where they did a whole history of the feud, and it worked. I mean, I had never seen the Roberto Clemente Stadium as packed as it was that night. If you see the match in TV, you could tell that it was over capacity with the and it had a lot of great details that, man, I wish they do this today. They had the rule breakers walking Hercules to the ring and saying goodbye, maybe for the last time to him. And the other side, you had all the baby faces walking Carlos Colon to the ring and doing the same and kind of like saying goodbye because they didn't know who was going to win. The It had a big match feel. It felt like Ali versus Fraser, and for the boxing fans, I'm not trying to dishonor Ali versus Fraser, but that's how it felt. It felt like a big match that you don't see anymore in wrestling, at least in Puerto Rico. And I believe the match was a great conclusion to this feud, with both of them putting in a great match. A little different from the bloodbaths that they had before, but still a very satisfying ending with Carlos Colon defeating Hercules and kicking him out of the island. But the big match feel, it felt like the biggest match in the history of Puerto Rico. That match in January 6, 1989. To this day, there's a debate between fans on which was Carlos' best feud. For many, it was the longest one against Abdullah the Butcher. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that feud. For many others, in terms of storytelling, it has to be the Stan Hansen one. But to others like myself, in the sense of the passion that it brought, the way it was personal, and actually in one way or the other dividing the fans, because it was like the first time that fans were like pro Hercules and against Carlo, and it it had to be the Hercules Ayala one. One thing about this feud is that compared to other feuds, most of the feud and the promos are in YouTube. You could actually see from the start to the end of this feud, you could watch it in YouTube, which makes it one of those that you can go back and enjoy completely. Uh, Sadly, Hercules Ayala passed away, and everybody knows that Carlos Colon right now is battling serious health issues. But what they did in 1987 to 89 is provide us fans with one of the most historic feuds in the glory years of Puerto Rico, and one that almost 40 years later is still remembered like it happened yesterday. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed this look at the Hercules Ayala versus Carlos Colon feud. Next week, we're going to be talking about another great feud in the history of the glory years of wrestling in Puerto Rico. I want to thank everybody who has left their comments, their input, their question. You can do so in the comments in YouTube, or you could write me at luiscuevas36 at Gmail. You can also follow me at X under Caveman Zona W, and you could follow me right in Wrestling Dumb, desde los territorios por Wrestling Dumb in YouTube. Into next week, like I always say, honoring the great Joaquin Padinijo, I want to say to all of you, sayonara amigos, o adios, my friend.